Welcome to Life After the Fire, the preeminent podcast for all things related to having an amazing life after the fire service. My name is Chris Phelps. I'm your host, and I'm joined today by Randi Eisenshtat with Northwestern Mutual. She's our first non-fire connected guest. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah. So the big reason that I wanted to have you on the show is, we've only had like one or two shows that I've posted, but already we're getting some great feedback, and we've gotten a couple of questions related to folks that are getting ready to retire. So these are folks that are in like the last 6 months of their career, and they're trying to decide where to go. And I know from my experience, being a 22-year paid veteran of the fire service, that having a professional financial team behind you is vitally important. And that financial team to have behind you, starts with a financial planner, a mortgage lender, an accountant, maybe even an attorney. So let's talk about the financial advisor, financial planning piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's so interesting because in that world and in that industry, you talk pre-retirement and these guys and girls are young, right? Most of our clients, when we're talking pre-retirement, they're like pre-retirement, right? They're like 50s, 60s, like ready to not work anymore. Yeah. But when you're talking to somebody in the fire service industry, they have a whole life ahead of them.
Exactly.
So, we had talked about this offline, but, it's vitally important to have that team from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Doesn't always happen that way, right? Right. These guys and girls get into the career and they're just excited to like be doing their dream job, and the last thing they're thinking about is calling a financial advisor. Nobody's thinking about calling a financial advisor. We don't get incoming calls, right? Like exactly. All of our businesses are predominantly based off of word of mouth and referrals. And, typically any outgoing calls I make is because somebody gave me somebody's phone number to say, hey, right. This is a good friend of mine. This is my brother. This is my sister. They would love to meet with you. So yeah, it is very important that they have that team around them from the beginning. But if they are just starting to look into some of these areas for financial advice, say 5-10 years before they're retiring, it's a very individualized conversation, right? I have one client that is a firefighter up in Orlando. A really good friend of mine's husband works here in Palm Beach County. And, when I spoke to both of them, and both of them say like, it's a very individualized process and decision on which route to take. Right. And how to save money and invest money according to what their goals are. Right. If you're a single person, you have probably different goals than somebody that's married with kids. And if you're somebody that wants to take that early retirement, right, and you have hopes, goals, and dreams of some other career avenue that you want to take, then there's things that need to probably be put in place to do those things, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, so I think it's definitely, as non-sexy as it is, I don't have an answer for everything, but it is, I think, a very individualized type of conversation for these people.
And how does that conversation start? Like, what are some of the typical things that you that you look at in doing a full comprehensive evaluation of somebody's financial planning?
It's a great question. So that I can answer. So when we sit down with somebody, whether it's an individual, a couple, a family, a business, right? Some of the first questions that we ask are like, what are your goals, right? What are your financial goals? What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? And then we kind of break that down with short-term, mid-term, and long-term, right? Because the way in which we do comprehensive planning, we want to know these people's lives, right? We
Mm-hmm.
want to get in there and say, like, we want to know like what your dog's name is. Like, we want to know like what your favorite food is. Like, we want to know them on a very personal level, because the way in which we're able to make these plans, it's on a very relationship based, conversation, and not transactional. Like, okay, you have this much discretionary income. Let's put it in here. I'll call you in a year. Right. So the first thing we sit down and we ask, like, what is it that you want? Right? Like, where do you see yourself 3 years, 5 years, 15 years down the road? So that's kind of how we start. And then we dig in a little bit more and we get some facts from them based on their history with financial planning. Some people have done nothing, right? Some people have done things, but not necessarily with somebody. For example, they had an old 401k and called their bank and said, can you put this in an IRA? And they didn't even know what IRA stood for, but they were just told to do that, right? So
Exactly.
they do that. And then, some people aren't even really aware of the ins and outs of how these financial vehicles work, right? Like the pros and cons to everything. So we dig in, and not only do we get as much information from them as possible to create a comprehensive financial plan, but we're all about educating, right? Like, we want our clients to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, right? And also be able to feel kind of like that peace of mind around their plan and the things that we put in place. I find that, and you probably will agree with this, that one of the biggest stressors in people's lives is money,
Yeah.
right? And it's like almost one of the number one causes for people to get divorced, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's just not alignment, or really a plan in place at all. So it's just kind of a junk drawer of things
Yeah.
floating around.
Yeah. So I recall like starting out, obviously, we didn't have a lot of disposable cash, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we had a nice, comfortable nest egg, there were other investment vehicles that we took on, namely insurance, to kind of bridge that gap. Like if all of a sudden, I wasn't here anymore, or my wife wasn't here anymore, we would still have something to provide for our kids.
Right.
So, what's your some of your philosophies on insurance to start out? Is that like one of the first things that you recommend, or?
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite things to talk about. So thank you for asking. So as you had mentioned, I'm with Northwestern Mutual, and 160 plus years ago, Northwestern was a life insurance company, right? Now, fast forward to where we are now, we're a full-fledged, financial planning firm. So one of the key things that we do, I think, and specialize in is life insurance, income protection, right? Long-term care insurance, and risk management, really overall. And making sure that our clients aren't just talking to us about putting money away and saving and investing, but like, God forbid something happens, right? What does this look like for your wife? What does this look like for your husband? What does this look like for your children? Do you want them to go to a state school or a public school or private school, right? So again, we ask all those like really personal questions. Some people don't have all those answers, but we get to know them as much as we possibly can. And yeah, that is, if not the most important part of a conversation, but it goes hand in hand with talking to them about the offensive side of their planning, right? Like retirement and savings and all of those fun things that people really enjoy talking about. Risk management and life insurance is super morbid and not fun, but very, very important when it comes to a comprehensive financial plan. And what we find sometimes is when we get with people that have either done some things or even put some insurances in place, their insurance stuff and their investment stuff are not speaking to each other.
Mm.
And the way in which we comprehensively plan for our clients is those things should marry one another. Like one
Okay.
thing works for one reason and the other thing works for another reason, but like there are really cool strategic ways to actually use insurance that will offset down markets, right? So if, for example, you don't have any other place to run to pull from, let's say in your retirement years, all your money is invested in the market. God forbid it's March of 2020 and you've got one place to go to pull money out to pay for your cost of living and it's on sale. right? So it's super, super important to make sure that our clients are completely diversified amongst different vehicles, which are, risk adverse and, taking on the proper risk that suits their wants and needs, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate to have some of these things set up for myself from a very early age. My dad worked for Northwestern for 18 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So it's funny. I ran into a guy in the elevator in our building today and he introduced himself and his name was Bob. And I was like, that's my dad's name. And I said, my dad used to work at Northwestern. He goes, oh, you took over his practice? I said, no, my dad's been long retired from this business. And I had zero intentions of getting into this business because of him. It just worked out that way. I had a whole nother career before I got into finance. And because he worked for the company and had the education that he had around these things at a young age, when he got married and started having a family, he put those things in place. And he opened up my first life insurance policy for me when I was a baby.
Mhm.
And it's been such a beautiful gift that he was able to give to not only me, but my brother, because I'm insured for the rest of my life. God forbid my health changes. Obviously, as we get older, insurance costs more money.
Sure.
But he opened up a permanent life insurance policy for me, which was growing year over year in the accumulated cash value, right? So you hear permanent life insurance, whole life cash value, they're all the same thing. They just have these different names. And what that does is not only does it give me this permanent death benefit, that's an appreciating value, so will continue to grow year over year, but it has a living benefit. This cash inside this policy that is risk-free, accessible at any time for any reason. So, there's penalties to touching our retirement accounts too soon.
Sure.
We got to pay Uncle Sam and fees and all the things. This has none of that, right? And I actually didn't even know about this policy until I was 25 years old, which was a good thing. Because any year before that, I would have made horrible financial decisions with that money. But it's been able to help me in times that I've needed money, right? So I've been very fortunate to have my dad had been in the business to know about these things, to set these things up for my brother and I. And I asked him one day, if he wasn't in this business or if he wasn't with Northwestern, would he have done those things? And he's like, I don't know, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So
There's conscious incompetence and unconscious incompetence.
Yeah.
So knowing what you don't know and
Tongue
not
twister.
knowing what you don't know. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you talk about is, the differences between an offensive financial strategy
Mhm.
as well as a defensive financial strategy, and that this vehicle that you're talking about um, has elements of both,
Right.
so it can solve some both objectives, if
Right.
you will.
Right. Yeah. So there's two types of life insurance, right? If you're needing to put those things in place, God forbid, because if something does happen to somebody, there is a financial impact no matter what on the rest of
Yeah.
the family. And everybody has an insurance need, right? That's not a one size fits all thing either, right? It's, what's your mortgage? If God forbid you passed away, don't you want to make sure that that's taken care of so your spouse doesn't have to take on a second job just to pay the bills, right? And what is that person's, financial loss, right? If they're not here anymore, what does life look like when they're no longer making money, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not here. So everyone's got their own insurance need, but there's term insurance, which just lasts for a term of time. And it's a super inexpensive way to get a lot of insurance, right?
Mhm.
So let's say I have a client that comes to me and they've only got a limited budget to spend on their financial plan.
Mhm.
We look at the risk management side of their financial picture first and foremost. And we say, okay, well, this is your insurance need, but I've only got this much to work with. We're going to start with some term insurance because at the end of the day, something's better than nothing. It's going to
Sure.
cost you less than what it costs to get a cup of coffee in the morning.
Right.
And there's options within those term insurance policies that over the course of the first 10 years of some of these policies, you can convert into a permanent life insurance policy when it makes sense financially for you to be able to afford to do something like that.
Gotcha.
Obviously, permanent insurance costs different than term insurance because it has all these additional benefits to it, right? You're getting cash value. You're getting the company dividend payout. You have an appreciating death benefit where term insurance is just an amount. God forbid something happens.
Yeah.
This gets paid out to your family. And there's a crazy statistic that not a lot of people are even aware of, but I think it's like less than 2% of term insurance policies, and I can only really speak on Northwestern, actually get paid out on the life of the policy. I mean, people aren't, prematurely dying every single day. They are, but statistically, those policies don't often get paid out, which is good.
Yeah, that's great. That's
it's good.
Great way to mitigate your risk.
Right. Exactly. We also, being one of the most sought after insurance companies, are only insuring healthy people and people that, we're not willing to take on risks. If somebody comes to me that's just had a heart attack and is smoking cigarettes and going to the bar every single night, they're probably going to get declined.
Sure.
So, it's crazy.
There's some underwriting involved.
Exactly.
Okay. So moving on to more of the, some of the offensive strategies.
Yeah.
Obviously starting early is the best.
Yep.
But as people are getting closer to retirement, one of the big questions that comes up, some fire departments have something called a drop program. So it's a deferred retirement option. So they can, physically retire, or I guess it's theoretically retire, but then they're still on the job. So they're still collecting their income from the fire department.
Right.
But their retirement that they would normally be receiving is going into a separate account and is dispersed to them upon their actual retirement date as a lump sum.
Right.
One of the big questions we get is, should I go into the drop, or should I just retire and go off and take on another career?
Right. Yeah. And, I had talked to those two people that I had mentioned, one of my clients and then my friend's husband, who's also a firefighter, and both of their answers to me when I had asked this question, because I wanted to know for myself too, because I don't have a ton of clients that are in that industry, but when I do come across those people, hopefully from this podcast, I'll be able to service them and be able to give them some more direct answers. But unfortunately, what I'm finding is a lot of those answers to those questions are very individual based on that person, right? I think it's amazing the benefits that you guys are provided, right? There are so many incentives to go that route, for a career, because of those benefits. Not everybody gets those things, right? Yeah. So, and the other thing to consider is, like, if you've got this lump sum of money coming in, there needs to be a plan in place for that lump sum of money. Where is that going, right?
Yeah, because if you don't roll that over into a qualified plan, you're getting some major tax implications.
Exactly. So that's the other thing that we strive to educate our clients on, is like mitigating their exposure to taxes and making sure that they understand, like, well, this vehicle, you can do this, and these are the rules and regulations here. And then this one, well, this doesn't hurt you here, but it has this, restriction on it. So just kind of educating people on where they can put money, why, and then also understanding, like, the need for it, right? Like, you're in the real estate business now. So a lot of people are like, well, I want to buy a home in a year. Okay, well, that money needs to be more liquid, right?
Yeah.
Or if somebody's like, I want this money for retirement, I don't want to touch it, then we can put that into something that, you don't necessarily need in a short-term period.
Excellent. So basically what you're saying, obviously it's very individualized as to what's the best thing to do, whether you're moving on into another career, going off to earn a second pension, moving into a whole nother line of work.
Yeah.
Or you want to just be completely and totally retired. Your response or your individual answer to that question is going to be different.
Yep. Yeah.
So good stuff there. And
how old are some of these people when they retire? Like, they're like in their...
I was 41.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's great. My dad started his business when he.
Now, I didn't actually, let me back that up a little bit. I was 40. but I bounced around for a couple of departments.
Yeah.
So I had not reached my normal retirement age, 100% vested. We'll start collecting when I turn 55. Never did or had the opportunity to do the drop program, anything like that. But, I moved into the mortgage business, moved
Right.
into another career, and was fortunate in that, I had set a goal for myself that, moving into this business, I didn't want to have a step back financially.
Right.
And, so like my first year, I accomplished that goal. I made more in the mortgage business than I made the prior year in the fire service. And then that following year, it like almost doubled. And
Yeah.
then the year after that, it almost like doubled again. And then, fast forward to a really, really amazing year. And it was like, okay, we're making in a month what we made in a year
Right.
in the fire service. So,
Right.
something like that is very difficult to anticipate or project I never could fathom that. But,
Yeah.
so, I would have started down one financial path. Well, we did. We started down one financial path, and then we had to make a big
Yeah.
transition because totally different,
Yeah, you're
totally
making a
different ball
different
game
type of
now.
income. Yeah. And and I don't know how many people are aware, but like when you are, this is later in life, right? Like my parents are now 70, but when you start withdrawing from these retirement accounts, you can only be showing on paper a certain amount of income, right? So if you are taking on another career and you're making really, really good money, you know, you can't necessarily also be taking from some of these vehicles, your retirement accounts.
Right.
So yeah, there definitely needs to be conversations, I think, with each individual based on the path that they want to take. But I'd ask about your age because it's like, I'm 36. Like
Mhm.
it'd be nice to not work, but I love what I do. But 5-6 years from now, I couldn't see myself doing nothing.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I made a career change, whatever the case may be. I mean, I did make a career change from my past career into my career now. I was in my early 30s. I couldn't imagine, like, what are you going to do all day? I mean, you can go golfing and
Yeah.
sit on your boat.
I mean, there definitely are those success stories of folks within the fire service that, when they got to their normal retirement age, and whether they did the drop program or they didn't do the drop program, there are those success stories of folks that have been able to live off of that, and live within those means,
Hmm.
and live within their means, and be happy and prosperous and whatnot. But there's just as many, if not more, folks that got to their retirement age and said, "Okay, I've been working all my whole career for this, and this is how much I'm going to get.
Hmm.
I can't live off of that. I'm
Right.
going to have to do something else. I wasn't. I can. All I know how to do is be a firefighter.
Right.
So that was another impetus behind this show, was helping people to, or inspiring people to think about their life after the fire, and
Right.
what do you want to do, what do you want that to look like.
Yeah.
And here's examples of folks that are in their retirement and what they're doing, or and find something that matches up with what you like or what
Yeah.
you want to be, and run with it.
Yeah. Did you know that you wanted to retire early?
No.
You didn't. So what kind of made you
So
make
I
that decision?
it was for us, it was a family decision.
Okay.
So, as my wife likes to say, she was following me around for 15 years, and it was my turn to follow her.
Got it.
And she was offered a great position to realize one of her life goals of being a flight nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And was offered a position up in Tennessee,
Cool.
and I had been working. I was a battalion chief with the fire department. I had a pretty cake job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie. I
Yeah.
think it was the best job in the fire service. The guys that worked under me took very good care of me. Wasn't a lot of heavy lifting at that time. Um, but I also had on the side, as most or a lot of firefighters do, they had something they do on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I got roped into the mortgage business, and when she said hey, I got this opportunity to go to Tennessee. I said, all right, I'll get out of the fire service. I'll do the mortgage business. And it was definitely stressful, a different type of stress than what I had at the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
Just, funny for people to hear. And like my first ever boss in the mortgage business sat me down. He's like, how's, it'd been a couple months, and he's like, how are you doing? You seem stressed. And I'm like, I got to tell you, I'm more stressed doing this job than I ever was running into burning
I was
buildings.
going to say, putting out a fire.
It's so funny. It's so weird, because I don't know. It was just doing the fire service. I knew, what we were doing. Yeah, stuff was stressful, and we saw a lot of really bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a lot of really good things
Mm-hmm.
too. I don't want to discount that.
Yeah.
But then in the mortgage business, it's like, man, these people's houses on the line,
Mm-hmm.
and their house was on the line with me at the fire department.
Yeah, right.
But it's a different kind of feeling. It's like, hey, you got that moving truck is loaded up and sitting out front. Can we get the keys?
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're waiting on an underwriter. It was so stressful.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
So it's just different. It's so weird, but yeah. So that was it, and it was definitely not my goal to do that.
Mm-hmm.
and retire early like that. But did it work out? Heck yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And having more opportunities to be together as a family and help with raising the kids, and it created so much more of a family bond.
Right. You have like more autonomy of your time. I feel like
wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you recommend that to some people, or would it obviously be like based on their individual situation?
Yeah, it all just depends. As far as, with me with the mortgage business, there was, I enjoyed it. Some could argue, but it turned out I was actually good at it, and I could make money doing it. So I call that the triad of awesomeness.
Yeah.
So something you're good at, something you like doing, and something you can make money at.
Yeah.
And if you find those three things,
Yeah,
in whatever it is, run with it.
Yeah. I remember reading in the Wall Street Journal years ago, and I think it said something around like 10 or 12% of people can say that. Like, can say that they're enjoying what they're doing.
Wow, that's a low percentage.
I know. This was a while ago, so hopefully it's changed. I feel like COVID definitely helped kind of steer people out of an unhappy work environment, into possibly something that they're more fulfilled in. But yeah, I've had 2 careers where I not only feel like I love what I do and I'm good at what I'm doing, but I can make a living and support myself.
Yeah.
And so I feel blessed to have had that twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you too.
Exactly. Cool. So we always try to, keep these, roughly around the 30-minute mark. It's like the average drive time or time on a treadmill in my case.
Are we boring anybody?
So I think we're getting close to that. So I always like to finish these with a call to action. So in our case here, I would say, whether you're brand new on the job, been on the job for a number of years, or getting close to retirement, if you have not reached out and spoken with a financial advisor and gotten on the right path to financial freedom, if you will, there's no better time than the present.
Yep.
It's a very high trust relationship that you have with your financial advisor, speaking from personal experience. And it's important to find somebody that you can have that level of communication and trust in. And a good way to get a hold of Randi would be how?
They can call me. They can email me.
Okay, what's a good way to email you?
You can email me at Randi, Randi, dot my last name, Eisenshtat.
We're going to put that in the show comments.
ENSHTAT at nm.com, so Northwestern Mutual. And I can be reached via cell phone, 713-502-1757. It's a Houston area code. Born and raised. And yeah, I mean, I would love to just have kind of an open conversation with anybody that's listening that is in that space, right? That they don't have that relationship with somebody. They've got some questions. There's no pressure to do anything. Our first conversation with people is really just to see if it is a good fit, right?
Sure.
It's kind of like speed dating.
Yeah.
And we have a huge team of people. I mean, we've got over 35 advisors in my office. My managing director has been in the business for over 20 years. So, if I'm not the right fit, which is totally fine, I've got a team of people that can work with all these individuals. So we would love to help in any way we can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, get your financial house in order. You need a good, solid team behind you.
Yes.
Financial advisor is a cornerstone of that financial planning team. And as far as our show goes, if you like what you're hearing, like, follow, and share. If there's somebody that you think that we should be connected with to feature on our show, you can reach us by email at info@latfpodcast.com. That's info@latfpodcast.com. We'll see you on the next one.